Here we go. Welcome to everybody here this evening, and anyone who may be streaming this meeting as well. Welcome. This is a meeting of the Comprehensive Planning Committee. We've had our first organizational meetings in December of last year and January of this year, and now we're on our fifth meeting doing work on the comprehensive plan, moving right along. We have a new first item here. We thought it might be a good idea to have a icebreaker question. Do we have someone with an icebreaker question? Lauren?
It's me. I'm the one with the icebreaker question. So our first icebreaker question is, if you could instantly master any skill, what would it be? And I'm going to start with Jane.
You're going to have to repeat the question.
Oh, Jane, let me intervene here for just a second. I just want to ask everybody here that some of us don't hear as well as others. I'm one of those folks who don't. I wear hearing aids. So if you could speak up and speak into your mic, we're all going to hear what you say, because what you say is very important and we want to hear it. So just a reminder to speak up and into your mics.
Okay. Is this better? Oh, I hear the difference. Okay.
Great.
If you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
This is really a toughie. And I have to go first, so I don't have much time. Everybody else gets to sit there and think about what they want to say. Maybe it would be the master of the one-liner, like saying funny things when you're called upon to say them.
I'd
So
say
do I-
neurosurgery. Neurosurgery.
Well, that pays well, at least.
I would say playing the trumpet so I can learn mariachi music. I'd like to be able to sing so people don't cringe when I'm at a birthday party.
Juggling.
Oh, my mic is on. I think if I could learn a skill instantly, it would be how to make great first impressions all the time.
Mine's fluid, but today it's learning Spanish.
I'll stick with the music and say piano.
I'm going to go a little supernatural and say I would love to be able to fly.
Listening.
Unicycle.
Sorry. You've all given me a lot to think about. But I'm going to go with Italian. I would like to learn to speak Italian.
I'd like to be able to talk to animals.
I think I'd want to master horseback riding, like all of the styles of horseback riding.
Guitar.
Paul took mine, Spanish.
I would also say another language. I don't have any particular preference, but just to be able to speak another language fluently.
I wish I could paint well, like art, not houses.
How about our two folks in the back there?
I'll go with the supernatural as well. I wouldn't mind being able to fly.
Make pasta.
Make pasta, okay. Should we ask Mr. Beal, what would it be your you could learn something instantly, would it be? New skill.
Drop a fly line where I want,
Good. Should I ask one historical question and see the historical knowledge of our group here? Our first mayor of Auburn was Edward Little. Who knows where he's buried?
Oak Hill Cemetery.
Correct. Correct. Oak Hill Cemetery.
Is there a prize for that, or do we get a prize?
You get my great gratitude and good wishes.
It's all worth it.
Yeah. Now, I have to say that there are some who suggested that my burying place might be somewhere near the landfill, but I'm not sure of that. So let's proceed with roll call, a roll call vote. Jane, I'll start with you in that corner.
Jane Costello.
Rex Rhodes.
Heidi Bertels.
Becky Conrad.
Jeff Harmon.
John Cleveland.
Paul Jacques.
Riley Bergeron.
Matthew Duval.
Dennis Bergeron.
Rick Whiting.
Kelly Butler.
Natalie Thompson.
Lauren Cafe.
David Hediger. Kevin Price.
Carrie Willett.
Allie Toby.
Phil Kroll. Dennis Dote.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda are the minutes from our previous meeting. Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion about the minutes? Additions, subtractions? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting minutes, raise your hand. Unanimous. This is the spot in the agenda, every meeting, where we wish to invite anyone from the public who wishes to comment to do so. I do see a public member here, so I'll pause for a minute to see if there's any input or any comments from a public member. Okay. Seeing none, we'll proceed to the next item. So the next item is the comprehensive plan survey. And I'm going to turn this over to Allie to go through these items.
Great. So wanted to start just with an overview of both the middle school and high school survey results. The full results from those were in your meeting packet, but today just going through some high-level data from those. You'll see with some of those open-ended questions, those were converted into some bar graphs. To do that, went through those responses, developed some general themes or categories for those, and then assigned those general themes or categories to each open-ended response to be able to quantify some of those a little bit more. So when you see some of those bar charts and some of those categories, those are more broad categories representing different inputs from those open-ended responses. So starting out with who took the survey, there were 285 middle school students and 143 high school students across all of those grades. Most students lived in Auburn for more than 10 years, some others between 0 and 5 and 5 to 10 years, so interesting spread there. Largest group represented in the survey are 7th graders, followed by 8th graders, with more middle school students taking the survey. Accounts for some of those higher numbers. And then for responses from the high school age group, larger percentage of 9th graders, similar response from 10th and 11th graders, and then some input from seniors as well.
Allie, do you want questions as you go along, if there are any?
Sure.
Okay.
So looking at some of those transportation-related questions first, how are students getting around Auburn? How are they able to access the places that they would like to go? Most receive a ride from an adult from both the middle school and high school groups. Some students do walk as well as bike or use public transportation. For high schoolers with age there, some also drive themselves. Looking at students' favorite places in Auburn, there's some interesting differences between some of the middle school and high school responses. For middle school students, favorite place in Auburn is their home, followed by private recreation and entertainment options. So it's a broad category for things like Lost Valley, movie theaters, bowling alleys, the Roller Dome. Those places pulled that into category for privately owned recreation and entertainment opportunities. And then for the middle school students, also retail stores, places like Target, Walmart, TJ Maxx, as well as the parks, trails, and open spaces within Auburn. Similar results for high school students, except for the home being the favorite place there. A larger share of high school students' favorite places are the parks, trails, and open spaces in Auburn. Some of those same private recreation and entertainment opportunities, as well as retail stores. Looking at students' advice to newcomers. So if somebody your age moved here, what would you tell them about Auburn? An interesting split between the middle school responses of it's a nice place to live, pleasant, similar verbs to that used to describe the town, or the city, excuse me. And then the flip side of that of it's a little bit boring, not much to do. Similar responses for high school students, lack of things to do, a little bit more boring, it's nice, and then just general safety, feelings of safety walking around and accessing parts of Auburn. Looking at things to change, I'll note with some of these responses, there are differences with middle schoolers more often potentially not being sure about their thoughts on certain questions compared to high schoolers who do tend to have fewer of that not applicable or unsure response. So if you could change one thing about Auburn, what would that be? Things like improved infrastructure came up, so road improvements, traffic, transportation opportunities, more retail options, as well as some more entertainment options, improved safety, and then for the high school responses, improved infrastructure and more entertainment options surfaced to the top there as well. Looking at potential new spaces that students wished existed for some in their age, larger spread in the high school group, looking at new teen activity or event centers, more restaurants or cafes, improved parks, trails, and open spaces, more entertainment and retail options. Similar for the middle school students, more restaurants or cafes or retail options, but interestingly also more amusement parks and water parks as well. Looking at high schoolers in particular, since that's the group that would be most likely to transition out of high school into something else, would they want to stay in Auburn when they're older? Majority said they would not. Some were unsure, undecided, and then some said they would stay in Auburn. Some rationale for that, wanting to move to another state or another city, lack of things to do, a little bit boring, moving for better opportunities, or in some cases, no reason given there. Reasons for wanting to stay, Auburn has a good community and students want to be near their families. And then reasons for being unsure is general uncertainty around kind of what they would like to do.
That's an interesting piece of data, I think. 92 of the high schoolers aren't thinking of staying here. I think something we should remember as we think about what we should be doing in the future. A large number of folks who we invest a lot of money in to educate don't intend to stay. Now, not unusual for high schoolers too much. Usually when they get a little older, though, they realize they should come back home because it's a good place. But
So the last question in the survey focused on students' ideal place to live. So if you could live anywhere that you could dream up, what would it look like? What would it have? How do you get around? For the middle school piece, rising to the top was access to parks, recreation, and open space, and somewhere that is walkable and bikeable. So thinking about looking forward, looking at additional opportunities for parks, rec, and open space, and walkability and bikeability. For these questions, broke this out a little bit more into some more tangible items, looking at responses for ideal community size, kind of a split here between students who would want to live in a more rural area, a small town, or a larger city. Some of those desired spaces and amenities, again, are parks, rec, and open space, as well as some new services and amenities like restaurants, shops, doctors' offices. Again, looking at walkability and bikeability, rising to the top as kind of how in their ideal world they're getting around. And then some other desired community attributes is connection to community and their neighbors, good weather, and safety. And then looking at high school students, again, access to parks, recreation, and open space in a more walkable, bikeable area. Also looking at access to amenities, restaurants, shops, other services, as well as more of that rural feel. So looking at the high schoolers who responded that they had an ideal community size, largely preferred more rural areas, but again, still wanted somewhere that was walkable and bikeable, again, near services and amenities like restaurants and shops, and access to parks and open space. And again, connection to community and their neighbors was the biggest desired community attribute there as well. Again, those full responses, if you're interested in reading those, are in your packet as well. Pause there. I know that's a lot of information, but any questions or thoughts there?
any questions, observations about young people? Thoughts?
I thought it was interesting that there were more middle schoolers answering. And then I thought about the high school kids and then just the responses about wanting to leave. And I was thinking back to my, if somebody asked me that question, I probably would have said, I want to leave. So I'm not sure how much I would take from that. But I thought it was really interesting, that sort of disinterest from the high school students relative to the middle school students, but sort of predict.
So I had a question about that response about, this 92, is that 92% or 92 kids?
92 kids.
One was just, do you have any sense if you ask that question of, teenagers anywhere, are they telling you they don't want to stay where they've been? It would be interesting to know whether that's just kind of goes with the territory of being a teenager. And the other thing that I wondered is if you had it'd be interesting to know what these kids are going to do. Like, what are they going into the workforce? Are they going off to college? Are they going into the service? Or, because that, I don't know, just be kind of an interesting sort of context about some of the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Matt?
So, good question. This slide that we're looking at here, the respondents, are those people that just chose to, how did you choose these?
So for some of those categories, the community size, spaces, and amenities, kind of modeled that based on the question that was asked. So what is there to do? Kind of what does it look like, feel like, and active, or how do you get around? So for the respondents who indicated that they had a desired community size that they would like to live in, would tag that as kind of rural, small town, big city. So this is indicative of all of those responses, if they indicated an ideal community size, what was that ideal community size, for example?
Okay, I'm just actually struck by the transportation on both the high school, makes more sense for high schoolers, I mean for middle schoolers, but for high schoolers that they want it walkable and or bikeable, which is currently not Auburn, which I think is interesting.
I was thinking that Jane's question is sort of a corollary to that question in regards to, what did they plan to do? What were their thoughts about their future? I'm sort of wondering if what that means about aspirations in the community. Because aspirations drive a lot of things in a community of what you want in the future. And it would be informative on what their aspirations for their life are. I remember in the past when I was working with the city that not only younger people but older people would often say to me when we wanted to do something like fix up our downtown. We had a lot of older dilapidated buildings that we removed and made it look more walkable, more pleasant. And their response was to me, John, this is too good for us. We're not that kind of community. So there was this sort of sense of being second-class citizens sometimes, which I still hear occasionally, by the way, that their aspirations often are that these are the kinds of things that are not for us, they're for more higher income communities or communities like the Portland area. So it's sort of interesting how people feel about their community and what they will want their elected leaders to do. Any other comments?
I'll just pick up on what John just said. I just yesterday was having a conversation with a young person in Auburn, not related to this, but the conversation turned to being in Auburn, staying in Auburn, and that came up. The direct quote was, "I don't find this community very inquisitive or interested in things. When I talk to people, they don't seem to really have," what was the word they use? Interest. They don't really have interests, which I find these things, this was a young person in Auburn. That's number one observation. That's a data point of one person. But I do think it's indicative of conversations I hear often across generations. The second thing about the walkability, I think we struggle because we're such a large community, and we know that that's a real desire. I did some work with an AARP survey a couple of years ago, and we have a lot of needs around walkability. And the other thing about where people want to walk to, I think, is important, right? I mean, we can go out for walks, but I think kids probably want to go somewhere. And as it relates to this work we're doing, I've often said to people when they say, oh, there's limited retail or there are limited restaurants, actually, whether you like what we have is a different conversation, but there are many things. I'll just pick 6. If you put Orphan Annie's next to Access Foods, next to Starbucks, let's pick 3 other ones, we could all do it, right? It would be a different answer to that question, right? If you went to a place in Auburn where there was a cluster of things that we all like, I think the perception would be different. So to me, that does have to do with land use and zoning and planning around how we take a very large landmass and create spaces within it, and then you could bike and walk to those because it would be a destination. But if a kid wanted to go get a muffin and a cup of coffee and a book, they're not going to bike or walk to do that in Auburn right now.
It's an interesting point, Becky. Rick?
Just to build on what Becky said, the Auburn Downtown Action Plan for tomorrow said exactly that. We want to have more small businesses in the downtown, maybe a business on the first floor and then residential upstairs, and allow some of these downtown residential neighborhoods that are just residential to be more mixed use. And it didn't really catch on. I mean, we did pick up a bed and breakfast, actually a couple bed and breakfasts, but that was sort of the driving, issue of like density and clusters of activity.
Anything else? Okay, hearing none. I'm going to move on to the Community Vision Survey update.
So provided a snapshot in your packet from this time last week. Numbers look a little bit different since then. The mailings went out and are sitting as of 4:30 this afternoon at 484 responses to the survey. Looking at kind of who has taken that survey so far, mostly homeowners, a handful of renters, some folks live with family or friends, and then some live outside of Auburn. Looking at age of respondents, the largest age demographic that has taken the survey is the 60 to 69 range. Input from 30 to 39 through kind of 70 through 79, somewhat evenly represented. Looking at race and ethnicity breakdown, mostly white or Caucasian, identifying second largest group is the prefer not to respond. And then looking at income level spread somewhat throughout the 50,000 to kind of 150,000 or more, with some smaller lower income respondents as well. We're still waiting to input some results from the Housing Authority, as well as a few others for that aren't included in this sample right now.
Jeff?
So I found this slide to present some real challenges for this group. Because when you look at this, who's responding is white, older homeowners who make in the top half of the income range, above the median income. There's nothing wrong with their answers. I think that's fine. I think they're part of the community. The challenge this points out is we're not going to get a community response if that's all we get for participation. So we really need to think about how we broaden this out.
Mm. And I think as we get to some of the other activities and trying to reach out, focus groups and meeting in a box, maybe we talk about how those might help in that area to some degree.
To Jeff's point, I was thinking the same thing with even just the members of this committee. Not all voices are being heard. That we definitely want included.
Yeah. And also remember that a large postcard mailing went out, I think 10,000 pieces, if I remember correctly, not to every house, to every resident, to every place where somebody lives, have a mailing address. So, that's been a big effort to try to reach out to folks. And I should note that the surveys can still be completed through June 20th. So there's still some time to do this. And hopefully some of the folks who might have gotten that mailing or some connection, we really would welcome them to complete this survey as well. But I think we're trying to use every avenue that we can to make this as responsive as possible to a wider group. Oftentimes folks who might not make as much money are working a lot, trying to make ends meet, have kids to take care of, or seniors, so schedules are busy, but hope they can find a few minutes to complete our survey. Any other thoughts so far? No? Let's continue then.
Actually, John, just one question. Because these aren't the race, ethnicity, and the age stuff, they're not compared to the population. It would be really nice to actually see, once we get the final results, what that looks like.
We can include that.
And might note, we have this initial survey being filled out, but we shouldn't extrapolate yet what it all means until we get all of the responses in. Ally, you want to proceed to the next area, or?
Actually, I have a question really quick. You
Oh.
mentioned that you're still waiting on some respondents from, is it the Housing Authority? Do you kind of have an estimate of the number that we may end up from that, or like a maximum? Do they have a number of residents that?
I don't know the number of total residents. Last I spoke to the representative from the Housing Authority, the respondents were limited, but that was 2 weeks ago. And so I have yet to get back to her. I emailed her this morning, but maybe, hopefully, a handful. That's the goal.
Okay, great. Just curious, that may change the numbers a little bit here.
Ally?
Lauren, do you want to start with the focus group?
Okay, so for the month of July, it's hard to multitask and keep your finger on this while talking at the same time. It's like a workout for my finger. Okay, so focus group meetings, we'll have one, and you'll see on the schedule, it's going to be Wednesday, July 9th from 6 to 8 p.m. And so you also see in your packet, there's a list of potential organizations that we'd like to reach out to. And the organizations and companies and so on are grouped by category. And the categories were determined in order to get a broad swath of the community. And so this is a draft focus group list in this moment. And so if you've looked at that focus group list, and if there are any gaps that you've noticed that we need to invite some folks that I forgot, or if you'd like to add another category, oh, thank you for scrolling. And the focus of these focus group meetings is to have very targeted questions for each category of group of table, in order to get at what issues they're seeing, what they would like to see in the future to help us with our visioning. And our hope for this focus group is that members of the committee would be at each table. It's going to be at the high school cafeteria. Members of the committee would be at each table to kind of facilitate those discussions, with city staff and project team helping to note take and so on and fill gaps in that way. But that's our focus group plan for right now. So if there are any comments on the setup that Barry Dunn has kind of laid out for us, a general idea of the meeting, very open to suggestions from the committee. We want it to be created by you and led by you to a certain extent. And so we could love to have a conversation about this for this agenda item.
And in that packet, have provided just a draft outline of what that could look like. Initial kind of opening activities, some smaller kind of independent opportunities, as well as just opportunity for a lot of those groups to get to talk and catch up, knowing that a lot of folks in the community likely don't get to cross paths super often. A quick introduction of kind of the committee, city team, kind of what is the comprehensive plan, how is this input going to be used, project timeline, and then saving some time for those breakout discussions and a report out at the end. Have provided some draft questions. The structure has changed a little bit from what is included in the packet, and the structure would match what Lauren shared in the list of potential invitees, but thinking of having some specific targeted questions for each of those larger groups, and would also welcome input from the committee on what questions would make sense for each of those groups as well.
If I understand correctly, the focus groups will be held like in the Edward Little High School cafeteria. There'll be a number of tables there. There will be folks from various backgrounds, interests, experiences invited, and that they will be grouped around those tables based on their particular interest or background, so that there'll be an opportunity for a variety of folks all at one time to think about the vision for Auburn. And I think this is also a time where if any of you can be available, that might be helpful, and you can join in, try to have at least one member at every one of the tables to show support from the Comprehensive Plan Committee. I'll try to be there myself, so help stimulate the conversation and get good ideas.
Where are these going to be? Is it just one meeting? I know you said a lot there.
It is one meeting at the high school,
It's July 9th, but what time?
6 to 8 p.m.
Do you have a schedule in your packet? I think there is a schedule in there. Both dates and location.
It is. It's right after the survey results.
One more up.
It's also on the screen.
Yeah, so, focus group, as we said, is Wednesday, July 9th, 6 to 8 at Edward Little High School in the cafeteria. Then there'll be a natural environment visioning group on Saturday, July 19th, from 10 to 12 at, that's Lake Grove Park. Hopefully it's a nice sunny day. And people and city and services will be Wednesday, July 23rd from 6 to 8 p.m. That will be in the cafeteria at Edward Little High School. Built environment, visioning opportunity will be July 30th from 6 to 8 p.m. In the banquet room at the Senior Community Center in Pettingill Park. And then there's a rain date for the natural environment, in case it's raining at the beach. Will be Wednesday, August 6th in the banquet room at the Senior Community Center. And these will be published on our usual portals, on the website and the like, to again push it out to the public, let them know about it. And hopefully you show up on a beautiful day at the beach, maybe there'll be people who want to take some time to tell us what they think the vision would be.
So I think it would be helpful, a lot of you have gone through a similar process to this, whether it's with the city or different organizations and whatnot, and to Allie and Lauren's point, if you've had a good experience doing this somehow, like share it with Lauren, because we don't want this to just be people sitting around and like a 20-minute presentation from Allie and her team. I mean, the idea is this is supposed to be fun, if you can make it fun, right? And have people engaged and want to show up and actually feel like they're contributing towards the process. So we've been throwing around ideas about good experiences we've had, but I'm sure you folks have had them too. So share those, because we want to do this right. And even if we go with the natural environment one and we're like, oh, that didn't quite work out, we want to do it something differently at the other ones, we can do that. So this is evolving. We want this to make this is a big part of the process, right? A lot of people are talking about information gathering. There's not much we can do about the data. The data is what it is, but the vision session, that's going to be where we're going to start collecting a lot of these ideas that are really going to drive home what the comp plan's goal is going to be. So, if you guys would take that into consideration, that'll be helpful.
I will add quickly the difference between the focus group. It's that it's an invited session, and then the visioning sessions. So focus group, and then 3 visioning sessions. That's open house style. So people from the community are interested in those specific topics are coming to those meetings. It's not, we'll invite folks, let them know that it's happening, but it's open house style for those ones and fun.
Yeah, so tell your friends to go to the visioning sessions. Don't have them show up at the focus group.
Well, I think the Lake Grove one should include hamburgers and hot dogs myself. Oh, I'm sorry, Becky. I'm blind on this.
So, that's okay. So I apologize. In preparation for tonight, I was buried in the student comments and I didn't get to this section. So if I've missed anything in here, just tell me I've missed it. My work in the community involves gathering people, and so I wonder these 3 things. Will you provide transportation? Will you provide childcare? And will you provide interpretation? And food. 4 things.
That's awesome. We thought about the childcare and food, but transportation and translation are 2 new ones for me. So thank you.
So if you need folks in various communities, I've got a good list of interpreters if you need that. But my experience in some of the immigrant communities, it takes a lot to get them out. But when you get them there, they'll really participate. But they'll need a few of us in the room that they know and trust. And I know there's a lot of folks in Auburn and City Hall who are those people. And, welcome them to bring some of their own food. It can become a real community spirit time pretty quickly, but it takes some work to make it happen.
I had the same concerns with getting a more diverse population there than what we're generally seeing, like the people that I generally interact with. Because most of these aren't walkable for everybody. They're quite a long. Auburn's just big, so it's hard to get a central place where a lot of people can access it without relying on somebody else to get them there.
That's a good point, Paul.
And in your packets have also provided just some sample activities that we've found have been a little bit more engaging and successful in our experience. Things like having some infographics and handouts if there's specific information to share there, things out of the inventory or specific topic area focuses, open-ended ideas prompts, so sticky note activities, broader questions, getting at kind of vision for different things, can focus on ideas and challenges, more vision, I think came up today, kind of perceptions of Auburn and identity, and potentially looking at kind of how do you view Auburn today versus what would you like to view Auburn as in the future, looking at some questions and activities like that for the different topic areas. Some mapping activities. I think, Becky, you mentioned wanting to know where people might want to walk to. Mapping activities and things like that can get to some of those questions, able to do that digitally as well as on kind of paper maps as well. Live polling questions. So I think some of you may have experience with this where you can log in and you have one question, things around challenges, success, and as folks enter, words get bigger in a word cloud, or you can see some larger open-ended questions. Would want to look at potential technology support for those folks who may not have smartphones. Dot activities and visual preference activities, so looking at things like priorities or kind of visual preference. So what do you want the street to feel like when you walk down? Put a dot on kind of what you relate to. What parks and open spaces do you want to see kind of replicated in the future? What are you more drawn to? And then also looking at some priority. We we have a draft example of what this could look like in your packets as well. So investments that are important, putting a dot where you see kind of what you want to support or what you think contributes to that strong community. Budget and prioritization activities, things like Monopoly money. If you had $100 between categories, what would you put that towards? Using points, things like that. Thinking about kind of importance and priority to different community members. And then thinking about being able to interact with everyone of all ages and make sure that this is accessible and fun, having some drawing sheets, things like that for younger kids, older kids, anyone. I like to draw. And then some mental mapping activities. So if you were from memory to draw a map of Auburn, kind of what places do you remember? What is important to you that you know where that is and you know how to get there from these places? Looking more at some of those community anchors. And then typical kind of small table discussions as well around different topic areas too. I know for some folks it's easier to sit down and they would prefer to have those conversations. So thinking about some of those. So just wanted to provide some examples of what activities could be there. Just some considerations as we're thinking through this is the ability to recreate activities digitally, knowing that a meeting on a Wednesday night may not be accessible for everybody, to still provide some opportunity outside of that event to respond in the same way. Ease of access and the knowledge required to participate. Things like zoning can be very technical and can have a high barrier to entry for folks who may not have a deep understanding of zoning. So thinking about kind of the questions that we're asking folks to respond to and how easy those would be to respond to. Time commitment, the general ease of providing feedback and input. I think somebody mentioned not sitting and listening to us give a 20-minute presentation and then asking them to sit in an hour and talk at a table. So thinking about the time commitment and ease of providing that feedback and that input, and then asking questions that will lead towards kind of the vision for Auburn. So making sure that we're asking questions that will help move the project forward and can be used to guide the next steps as the committee looks to create their vision, policies, actions in the future of the plan. That's a lot broad sample of things the committee could look to do. Open to questions or anything on those, or thoughts that all of you have outside of what we've presented as well for activities.
Well, those are all good and interesting ideas on how to have people participate and feel as though they're making a contribution. I think, just reiterate for a moment what Becky said, it would be really important at those meetings, right at the front door or right where people enter, that they're welcomed by someone into the meeting and thanked for coming, so that they feel comfortable there. Really, it's important for folks who are coming to some place where they don't know everyone in the room. They might feel a little inhibited about expressing their opinion, but making them feel welcome and making them feel comfortable so that they can express their views, I think, is an important part of making it successful, and making people feel as though this is something they can be part of too. It's just not for other people, but they can do it as well. Any other, Becky, I'm sorry. I'm
talking a lot tonight. Were you able to capture the names of the students that participated in the survey? It would be great to have them there, 10, 15 of them. Imagine if we had middle schoolers welcoming us into our community visioning room. That would be terrific. And I'm guessing your high school and potentially your high school pool might have been more representative of the population in our community, the full population in our community. I mean, the high school's pretty diverse right now. So that might be a way to get them, to get some of their friends and parents to come.
Mm. Paul, did you have?
Oh, that's a great idea, to be honest with you, because I was thinking the smaller schools, the younger schools would be a little less intimidating than the high school. And sometimes feel a little more local, even if it was the elementary schools or something as well, getting the parents, because everybody's comfortable at the elementary schools. And name tags and pizza go a long way too.
I think that's a great idea. It taps into neighborhoods and the sense of place that we've been talking about. If you did it, I mean, you'd have to do more of them because
yes,
you've got more elementary schools, but I think it's a great idea.
Anything more? Does that bring us to item 8, subcommittees?
I think we're on 7 now.
Oh, 7? Okay, excuse me. Outreach. Meetings in a box? Talking events?
Okay, it's me again. So to Mayor Harmon's point earlier about, and others' points about reaching those demographics that didn't take the survey and the importance of that. I've been meeting with a few folks in city staff and sending some emails to community leaders in groups that include new Mainer populations, which is a diverse group of folks, and also the unhoused, and then youth services as well. And so with unhoused, I actually have a meeting tomorrow at the drop-in center with the volunteers there to plan a listening session for August 6th. So we can get that input before we start visioning, and we'll plan out what that looks like tomorrow. For the new Mainers, that one is still in brainstorming collaboration mode. I'm reaching out to community leaders in that space and the meeting with city staff and general assistants next week to see how we can best approach that community and get a wide swath of that group as well this summer, and then onward and throughout the year as well. And then youth services, also thinking about best ways. I was connected with the leaders of the different organizations that serve the youth in Auburn. And so that might look like a meeting in a box where we send them questions, and then as they're interacting with the people that they serve, so the youth, they can ask them questions, and we can maybe have shorter surveys for those kids as well. On that note, too, for the unhoused, we're planning on having an ideas wall put in the drop-in center for the entire month of July. And so as people are flowing in and out of that center, they can post ideas in a more passive way, so that we're not like on August 6th, hello, it's the City of Auburn, how are you? So that's thinking about that. So for each of those groups, we might have shorter surveys that they can take. We'll have idea walls, listening sessions, meeting in a box that will unfurl over the next month and a half or so. And I will keep the committee updated on that. And the need to have, if committee members are interested in joining this kind of outreach effort as well, we can tag some people into that. Farmers market and food systems and so on. I have a meeting in a few weeks with the Lewis and Auburn Climate Action Group food systems. And so that'll be kind of tagging in those people as well. And then I'll be tabling, if anyone wants to join me, at some farmers markets in Lewiston for the summer as well. So outreach, meeting in a box, pertinent to those demographics that we didn't capture in our survey. And if you have any other ideas, please send them my way. And that's my update.
And also with that, we included a draft template for what a meeting in a box could look like as well. We found that that can be successful for specific neighborhood organizations or smaller groups who do meet regularly, who have an interest in participating in this process that way at their regular meetings or on an ad hoc basis. If there's thoughts from the committee on questions that might make sense to ask for different organizations, we would love to hear those as well. And then we also have in there some sample poll questions for, sorry if I'm making everybody dizzy. Looking through the summer, Lauren mentioned tabling at farmers markets and some other events to be able to have some shorter, more specific questions on the social pinpoint site as well, to be able to update that. We provided a draft list of questions that we could look to intersperse throughout the site. If there's any thoughts on those, or from the committee, if there's questions you would rather ask instead, would also like to hear those. These are typically short, multiple choice questions that are really easy to respond to. We have the ideas wall and the map up. Again, looking at some barrier to entry. Poll questions can be very quick and very easy to respond to. So based on kind of inventory, what's come up for you during the inventory process, what you've heard from middle school, high school students so far, if there's thoughts on questions you'd like to dig in deeper on or topic areas to dig in deeper on, we'd like to hear that as well.
Any further suggestions?
Yeah.
Riley?
Would it be, I don't know if it would be possible to have options for people to either do multiple choice or, I don't know if it would be good for the data, but rank those options? Because there might be someone who wants 2 or 3 of those things, but.
Yes, that functionality would be possible, yeah.
I've been sitting here thinking about, like, where do you go to get a much broader, swath of the population? I was thinking about laundromats, actually. And, I live in New Auburn. I mean, people come and go in and out of Roy's Foodland or Rolly's Diner. And I have a feeling that those businesses would be amenable to having somebody sit outside or, and just do simple surveys.
Jane, you're always reading my mind. We're on the same.
I think as you can see here, the staff has done a lot of work thinking about how to engage more people in more different venues and circumstances and backgrounds. And it takes a lot of work to organize this. Will take a lot of work to implement it as well. So I thank you for all the work that you're putting into this and the effort to make this as successful as possible and really getting our community to participate in this comprehensive plan. Anything else on number 7? If not, number 8, we're getting deeper into the inventory and analysis and the work that we as a committee are doing. Subcommittees have met. All 3 subcommittees now have met once to go over the sections of the inventory and analysis in their particular section. I think, Paul, you participated in one of those subcommittees. I think the built environment. Did you want to say a few words about your meeting and sort of summarize?
I'd be happy to, thank you. As everybody went like this at the meeting. So the Built Environment Group met June 9th, that was a Monday. And we mainly discussed the economy, housing, and transportation sections. Our local knowledge and diverse experiences brought a lot of questions regarding the usefulness of some of the data as presented, as was anticipated. But we also had a lot of discussions around how it would be useful and such. Anyway, some concerns were raised about the inclusion of Lewiston employer data. And I think the consensus came down to there was really an acknowledgement that the economies are so intertwined that that impact employment, housing, and transportation, and it was hard to untangle some of those. So that's probably why the data's in there, because there's just a river separating them. for the most part. Some notable feedback and some things that maybe could be, I don't know how they'd be incorporated, but like the impacts of like Norway Savings Bank Arena and how that impacts the whole region. While it has a handful of employees at it, but it created a lot of other economic opportunities for a hotel, restaurants, all kinds of things, and other hotels. It just generates a lot of traffic, infrastructure needs, and money for the economy here. Some things that I don't know if this stuff's available, but remote work trends are not addressed at all in here. Not sure, we weren't sure how that information would be gathered. And some updates on and some employer information. For instance, TD Bank is no longer located in Auburn, included in the list. These are certainly fluid lists with how businesses go. And then something we'd really like to see is the CMCC graduate retention and local employment impact. To see that's really obviously that school's been around for a long time, but some changes in the last 10 years and even more so recently, and how that's impacting us. And then a little bit more granular data on the workforce shortage. Like, is it in the trades? Is it in manufacturing? Is it in childcare or stuff like that? And then this opens to a lot of other discussions that could be had from there. Housing didn't get very far except for ideas and goals, which was not really what we were there for, but I think it was Mr. Harmon that mentioned that the HRNA study needed to be in there to really have a viable discussion about the limitations or what the needs are for the community. We came up with all kinds of ideas on what's missing, but it's on the anecdotal level, not supported by data and facts. Transportation, kind of similar. There was some things in there that there's just all kinds of ideas still, things being discussed, like building walkable areas around the community, whether it's the rail, and this discussion of inaccurate rail service references. Some of this we kind of talked our way out of, but as either a misunderstanding or misinterpretation of the data. And there was other suggestions in there. And then historic and cultural resources, we really didn't get very far with that because it wasn't on the agenda. So if anybody that was there wants to add something to it.
Yeah.
Most of this came from
anyone
the
who
AI generation
participated?
from the meeting notes, but.
Dennis?
Yeah, Paul brought up something that we discussed and turned over quite a bit, and I still don't know what to do with it. I mean, the comprehensive planning process, you're statutorily limited to doing things within your own community, but the conversation about the flux between Lewiston and Auburn really hit me. There's nothing we can do to control Lewiston, but I'm pretty sure that if we go about trying to plan in a box without actually acknowledging what goes on between the two communities, we're not going to end up with a successful plan. I just don't know how to deal with it, but it's worth thinking about, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dennis. The other thing I've noticed too is that a number of these chapters or sections are really interrelated with others. They're not necessarily all standalone items. So I think you find that in your conversations on, yes, you've identified an area, but it really affects 2 or 3 or 4 different kinds of things. You know, transportation is important to economic development, for example, and getting around and attracting people, as well as safety and transportation issues. So they're all interrelated. Anyone else who attended that subcommittee meeting want to add anything to the conversation? If not, I'll move to Riley. Riley, you were part of the People and City and Services. Add some comments.
Yep. Well, we did start right off at pretty much at the top, discussing the population and actually some of what we talked about last month with the from 10 to 20 year range where it declined, and how that was a somewhat recent change. So there were questions asked about what data changed to account for that change in the projection. The concerns raised about it were the margin of error with that, the lack of accounting for short-term rentals like Airbnb, and how that affects the population. The missing data on aging housing stock and possible unit losses was another topic that got brought up. Let's see. We discussed how the trend line of additional units being developed in Auburn, how that could be put side by side with occupancy rates, and if that could help come up with help aid our population projections. We talked about how Auburn has a lower household size in the surrounding area, and speculation that cultural or demographic trends could influence it. For school enrollment and education, elementary school enrollment data showed declines in some schools. There's an interest in understanding redistricting and jurisdiction changes. There's a significant projected drop in the school-age children 10 to 19. That was a concern that was raised. The education, attainment, and workforce skills, we wanted deeper insight into the residents' skills / training beyond high school education level. Industry sector broken down. Industry broken down by sector data was seen as insignificant. We had I think we wanted more specificity in the types of industries. The library services were noted as a regional benefit, which are available to neighboring communities and benefit them as well. Similar to this is hard to hold for a long time. Similar to the topic about including Lewiston, there was a discussion about how the homeless population often fluctuates between Auburn and Lewiston, and it was brought up that information is actually kept at the county level, so that would be useful information to have. And when we got to public infrastructure and water, water, sewer, and utility was discussed about the aging systems and replacement costs. There were discussions about the solar capacity and where it can be connected to the CMP, and some of the limitations in some of the areas that only have the 2 power lines and can't be hooked into one of those systems. There wasn't a lot of discussion on the capital investment plan. We did say that we needed to include information on current and planned infrastructure costs like South Main and Broad Street, and I asked about that. Yeah, so that was a brief discussion, a brief list of the things we talked about. But again, I don't know who else was there, if there's anything else to add.
Sounds like you had quite a robust discussion, so that was good. Anyone else who was at that subcommittee meeting want to add anything? No? Okay. I attended and chaired the Natural Environments Committee. meeting, well, actually last night. So folks that were there, I think were useful to know, in addition to myself. Heidi was there. Chris Carson, who is a citizen member, was there. Jane Coslow was there. Becky was there. Camille, who's a citizen member, she's also chair of the Lake Auburn Water Protection Commission. Dana came to the meeting. David Griswold, who's active, chairs the SNRB committee and is also a registered forester, was there, had some expertise. And Kathy Shaw came as well. Kathy is a well-known farmer here in the community. And staff members, David came, Allie was there, Barry Schiff from Wood and Kern was there, and of course Lauren was there going forward. So we had an opportunity for good input from a variety of individuals. Overall, well, there were 4 topic areas that we were assigned for that evening. They were agriculture and forestry section, water and natural resources, land use, parks, recreation, open space areas. We had very robust conversation about the first 2, agricultural, forestry, water and natural resources. We actually used our 2 hours up doing just those 2, and so we'll do land use, parks and recreation at our second meeting, which I think is June 30th, to do that. So overall, the committee gave some specific thoughts about areas where there was an incorrect reference to a group or an organization, helped direct it towards the proper references, which was helpful. We want it to be as accurate as we can as the public looks at it. And of course, local folks know local names for areas as opposed to map names, for example. So the committee did that. The committee also took a look at some of the content, what might be added there, and also make some suggestions about how the chapters might be organized in a way that were more easy to read and followed a descriptive pattern that was a little easier to follow. So made some suggestions on how to improve that. I'll just highlight a few things that were discussed. So under agriculture and forestry, agriculture and committee, we wanted to highlight that agriculture is an important part of the community. Good portion, as you know, of our land is dedicated for open space, forestry, and agriculture. We wanted to make sure that that had proper emphasis. There's also wanted to reference the Maine Won't Wait program or plan. This refers to how we can highlight food waste reduction and local food production. Thought it would be good to add an inventory of our current agricultural and forest uses. I don't think it is well known how many folks are actually farming or using their land for forestry. You know, it'd be good to highlight that. Want to take a look at what amount of land is under conservation easements, which is just another way of preserving land, or may not be in an agricultural forestry area. Wanted to make sure that the tone and the accuracy of some of the land use descriptions were accurate. Under current use and tax programs, we wanted to clarify what the programs were and their requirements, especially around open space and agricultural use. Some of these are state or federal programs. Also wanted to make sure that we had some clarity between what zoning regulations or land use regulations there are versus tax programs. two kind of separate things that can be used, but one is more land use and the other's state programs often, sometimes federal. Under food access, we had to reference the local food providers that are here. Sometimes people don't understand that there are retail food providers that do source a lot of local food. Hannaford's, for an example, Blackie's vegetable stand is another one. We also thought it would be important if we're looking at providing policies and directions in the future, particularly in related to agricultural areas. Just what are the barriers for particularly small agricultural uses, and understanding those, how we might overcome those barriers. For instance, oftentimes they need a processing method that a small farmer themselves can't do, and need to be able to focus having that service there for processing their product. Wanted to add that there is a new co-op that's offering cold and dry storage for food. Under forestry, we wanted to refine our discussion on climate limitations. One of the things we found was that obviously it's quite clear that climate change is going forward. It's affecting forestry, farming, and many other things. Again, one of these interrelated subjects. We thought it might deserve a section that speaks to that rather than kind of spreading it around. Wanted to also make sure we reference Auburn's forest management plan, including the public woodlots that are here. And also make sure that there's information about the fact that there is a community forest nursery here shared between Lewiston and Auburn. And also the fact that emerald ash borer is a problem and it's going to get worse. And, you know, planning for how we're going to deal with that would be important in the future. Under water and natural resources, wanted to make sure that had the most recent updates on shoreline zoning and watershed protections, both some local ordinances as well as state requirements. Make sure that we had the most recent changes in the Lake Auburn Overlay District, which put in a lot of protections for Lake Auburn. We wanted to also expand on the rivers, particularly Androscoggin and Little Androscoggin. Their classifications are important. In fact, the Androscoggin is going through that process now. It'd be important to know where we are and where we could be in that area and how we would set up policies. Obviously, the Androscoggin, Little Androscoggin are very important waterways here. Most communities would love to have those kind of resources. And going forward, as opposed to years back when people avoided the river because of contamination, people are now beginning to use it. And so I think it's important to make sure that we identify that. We think it's important to have a clear inventory of dams and what their condition is and what their ownership is. There's quite a few dams on Androscoggin. Little Androscoggin, actually some of the streams like Taylor Pond. So it's important to know that they're there, how they impact the environment, but also important to know that if it's a private use, what condition is it in? Does it pose any kind of a threat in the future if the dam fails? Specifically to Lake Auburn, which was an important subject, certainly important in this community, thought it would be very good to be specific about what the current regulations are in regards to boating and use of the lake, and what are more the recent related and developmental restrictions. It was important to clarify who's monitoring this, what the historic data is, what that's telling us about where the future is going. Thought it was important to elevate the fact that how the development pressures might affect the drinking water and the quality. And also, be clear that we have a waiver and how that may be affected if we lose the waiver in the future. Wanted to incorporate stream crossings with dams and culverts. It's been noted recently that we've lost a couple of culverts because of age and water, increase in rain in that areas. Again, add a dedicated section for climate change. And also important to look at what we're building in for resilience in our built environment in regards to how climate is changing. We've had number of instances where we've had a number of rain or washouts or flooding much more frequently than in the past. And include some of the historical information about how the environment has been affected, and flooding has affected the community. Also good to know something about the costs and expenditures as we plan for the future. Many of these activities are quite costly to repair going forward. And another area that was noted and not quite as obvious sometimes is looking at the language we use in regards to land use and being sensitive about some of the words. So, for example, and it didn't occur to me, but I had input from an African-American gentleman that when you talk about land use and you say you'd like to maintain the character of your neighborhoods, many of us think maybe that's talking about sort of what the housing looks like, and the street patterns and development. But other people who perhaps might be minority group, they see character as saying you don't want minority people in your neighborhood because you want to maintain the character of your neighborhood. So I think we need to be clear that when we're talking about this, we're not looking to be exclusionary in regards to anybody's background or ethnicity within the community. So with that, I would welcome any additions from members who were there.
I'm glad you brought up that last topic. That was, if you hadn't mentioned it, I was going to bring that up because I feel like it's relevant to everyone's work here. And it's something I've never even thought about, obviously, as a white person. And once he said that, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. Yeah, and that language is used in a lot of this type of planning and work.
Pull the mic a little closer to you.
Sorry, I'm quiet too. But yeah, that language is used a lot and often in this type of work. And it was really eye-opening and like instantly I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So worth everybody paying attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I being my background, and I wasn't immediately apparent to me. But when the African-American gentleman who actually serves on one of the committees approached me here one evening, recognized me as one of the individuals on this committee, he pointed it out to me, and all of a sudden I understood what he was saying. Anything else to add? No. Okay, so next steps. Summer, early fall timeline. Allie, is that you?
Yes. All right. So going into the next few months, obviously have a large focus on some of the upcoming engagement, but wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about the results of the work that you're all doing to review the inventory, as well as the results of that engagement is leading towards. So plan for your standing meeting in August to be more of a workshop style kind of meeting to develop a draft vision statement based on kind of the work that you've done now, as well as the input from the community for the survey and the activities to come. So looking just at a high level, wanted to provide some background on kind of what a vision statement is. focuses on some of those shared community values, things that kind of rise to the surface when we're looking through some of that importance to the community, aspirational and motivates the community towards a desired outcome, looks at a desired future conditions of the community, including physical, environmental, and social attributes. And then the vision statement will be what sets the basis for goals, policies, actions within the plan. So those subsequent phases, looking at how do we implement this vision in 10 years? How do we achieve a vision of what we would like Auburn to be? So included a little bit of just when we're thinking about crafting this as background, being clear enough to capture strategic direction as opposed to specific achievements that can be met and then discarded. So focusing at that higher level and then using those policies, those actions, and those goals as those specific achievements that can be met towards implementing that goal. And then just wanted to provide some examples of what a structure of a vision statement could look like. These can take on a lot of different forms. So as the committee is thinking about this, wanted to introduce some of the structures for this. Plano, Texas, as well as Ellsworth, Maine have some similar structures here. Both had that high-level 1-sentence, 2-sentence vision statement, and then had some more specific guiding principles. In the case of Ellsworth, their full plan was structured around those guiding principles. So instead of that traditional chapter structure, was structured around each of those specific guiding principles that were developed as part of their vision statement. Bangor's has more of that narrative style vision statement. Charlotte, North Carolina's focuses on some larger key themes, equitable, authentic, integrated, and resilient, and then has some values underneath that to guide specific direction for their actions within their plan. And then come up in the subcommittee meetings as well as tonight that a lot of these sections are interrelated, and the vision statement can provide a basis for the structure of the plan that integrates those chapters in a way that incorporates different topics in kind of more of a compatible way. So an example being Portsmouth, New Hampshire's vision statement. They developed 5 themes and a vision statement for each of those themes. So the vibrant, authentic, diverse, connected. An example on the left with vibrant there. Had specific goals for each of those themes and actions to implement those, and then also characterized how those actions and those themes relate to different future land use categories within their plan. And then similarly, example with Lafayette, Colorado, had more of a narrative vision statement, but in the structure of their plan, looked at some of those kind of guiding principles of inclusive, eclectic, and diverse, and then building that into broader policy areas like a connected community, strong economy, and environmental stewardship, and then broke that out more specifically into actions in different topic areas to help implement those. So just wanted to provide you all with some examples of what a vision statement could look like ahead of some of the activities coming up, and if that helps spur any thoughts on engagement as well.
Good, thank you, Alan. That's helpful to look at that and help structure what we'll be doing in the near future. Any questions? Okay, not seeing any. We're going to have some discussion about the Auburn social pinpoint data.
Pull up my spreadsheet. So just wanted to give an update kind of overall numbers wise of where we're at with total engagement. So for social pinpoint totals, there have been a total of 603 individual unique people visiting the website. Those folks have visited about 900 times, and there have been 51 folks who have contributed to email signups, the ideas wall, or the map in some capacity. And then looking at total engagements and inputs so far, we hit 1,000 different inputs to the plan so far today, so that's exciting. 39 folks have signed up for email signups. There have been 38 posts to the ideas wall, 15 posts to the map. Since this afternoon have gone up to 487 survey responses, and then between the middle and high school survey have 285 and 143 respectively. So just wanted to share numbers-wise where we're at this point in time.
Yeah, thank you for that update, and that's data we'll need to go back and take a look at as we proceed with the other parts of our comprehensive plan, and keep those comments in mind to do that. Well, we're proceeding well. We're on schedule that we've laid out for ourselves. The next couple of months are going to be quite busy here. That will move us forward in the next input section that we have, and completing our initial work on the inventory and analysis section, and set us up for more workshop kind of activities when we start talking about visionings and plans for the future. Anything else any of the other members want to bring up or comment on? Okay, seeing none, our next meeting then should be scheduled on July 22nd, which is the fourth Tuesday in July, right here, 6 o'clock. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you at a variety of these events and activities that we'll be having. And I thank you, as always, for your time and effort that you're putting in. Very important, and it's great that you've committed your time to help us with this important activity. There's nothing further. Someone want to make a motion to adjourn? Nope. Dennis makes a motion? Oh. Oh, okay. Rick and Dennis, first and second? Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for your time.